Tonight, my narrative turns to crimson-stained snow, the cries of innocent children reverberating across the Margeride Range, and a horror that turned a whole French province into a hunting field where people were the quarry. From 1764 to 1767, within the remote Gévaudan area, an unclassifiable entity committed killings with a cunning that hinted at awareness, chose its targets with a taste that indicated a distinct character, and withstood organized attempts to eliminate it, demonstrating a stubbornness that ridiculed humanity's claimed mastery over nature. Known to history as the Beast of Gévaudan, this being is not merely a piece of regional legend or a wrongly identified beast. It symbolizes the resurgence of an ancient dread that civilization vows to dispel, yet can only hold at bay for a time. These occurrences, documented in more than 200 official reports, church records, and private letters that weathered the revolution's devastation, compel us to grapple with inquiries regarding the lines separating humans from animals, civilized society from the wild, rationality from fear, boundaries that Enlightenment philosophy asserted it had resolved once and for all. They demonstrate how rapidly the thin layer of human authority crumbles when confronting a predator that defies established behaviors, and how swiftly societal structure degenerates into collective panic when assailed by elements that function beyond known classifications. Have you ever pondered the reason some historical monsters rise above their era to embody timeless fears? Why the Beast of Gévaudan persists not just as a footnote of history, but as a prototype that every age reimagines to mirror its own worries about the natural world, selfhood, and the precariousness of human supremacy. This was no mere instance of wolves preying on country folk. It was a philosophical upheaval that compelled France during the Enlightenment to face the prospect that rationality might prove inadequate as a shield against powers that existed before and will outlive human society. This evening, we explore 5 facets of the Gévaudan horror that explain why this specific incarnation of the monstrous still occupies our shared psyche, its significance increasing rather than fading. Ranging from the beast's evident awareness and strategic cunning, implying a thinking entity behind the bloodshed, to the societal collapse caused by terror that made communities turn inward. From the inability of scientific taxonomy to confine peculiar events within logical boxes, to the political fallout of a monarchy, powerless to shield its people from nature's verdict, these elements show how the creature acted as a dark reflection, exposing the Enlightenment's secret fears regarding advancement, logic, and human dominance. Yet, this transcends mere historical inquiry or cryptozoological conjecture. The Beast of Gévaudan foreshadowed modern quandaries about humankind's connection to the natural world, which climate shifts and mass die-offs render critically pressing. Studying the beast's hunting behaviors, we discover anticipations of present-day arguments over whether the natural world harbors kinds of awareness that follow rules we are unwilling to recognize. Reflecting on the mass panic that turned acquaintances into accused, we encounter queries about communal reactions to existential dangers made painfully familiar by recent pandemic events. Likewise, examining the era's inability to categorize the beast reveals the boundaries of human understanding when it meets phenomena that defy our labels. Tracing the political consequences of the monarchy's powerlessness, we observe how authority relies on commanding powers that may be inherently unmanageable. And studying the religious view of the beast as heavenly retribution, we face the enduring issue of theodicy that haunts every effort to give suffering significance. Welcome to an examination of monstrosity's philosophical aspects, where past terror encounters modern unease with an unsettling sense of familiarity, where Enlightenment confidence crumbles into raw doubt that logic cannot entirely eliminate. I am Obsidian Vault, leading you across the drenched meadows of Gévaudan, where a being that Enlightenment reasoning deemed impossible slaughtered freely for 3 years, bequeathing queries about nature, awareness, and human fragility that only gain relevance as our own convictions confront novel tests. The expedition we start this evening demands mental fortitude to face not only a historical monster, but also what its reality suggests about the classifications we rely on for mental stability. These occurrences compel us to doubt our presumptions regarding humanity's detachment from the wild, the capacity of logic to grasp truth, and society's power to defend us against entities that follow ethical codes unlike ours. They serve as a reminder that every age of reason harbors its own shadow, that each declaration of having subdued nature through knowledge provokes nature to reveal facets we have yet to understand, and that every boast of human dominance invites notice from powers that may challenge that claim, in manners we are ill-prepared to endure. Please subscribe to become part of our study into what the Gévaudan Beast discloses about the philosophy of monstrosity, where past horror sheds light on present frailty, and leave a comment telling us which feature of the beast's appearance most undermines your faith in humanity's dominance over the environment. Do these stories of intelligence lurking in an animal's gaze, of predatory attacks that felt targeted, of a natural world that pursued humans with seeming awareness, resonate with today's anxieties concerning our position within ecosystems we have disturbed, yet fail to comprehend? This evening, we delve into how 18th century France's encounter with an unnatural predator encoded warnings about nature's inherent power, warnings that grow ever more pressing as our own actions provoke reactions from natural systems we can barely understand, let alone control. Part 1. The intellect behind the fangs, awareness in the hunt. What makes the Beast of Gévaudan's 3-year nightmare most unsettling isn't merely the death toll, though. Over 100 dead and countless injured represent a tragedy of immense proportions. But the cunning it displayed in its hunting strategies, hinting at a consciousness lurking behind those animal eyes. This wasn't senseless slaughter driven by hunger or territorial urges. It was a selective culling that revealed preferences, tactics, and adaptability, forcing witnesses to grapple with the idea that nature might harbor forms of intelligence that defy human categories of animal behavior. The historical evidence, examined by scholars like J.M. Smith in his authoritative work Times, Monsters of the Gévaudan, shows attack patterns that favored specific targets, young women and children over adult men, lone individuals over groups, certain families over others, pointing not just to opportunistic killing, but to deliberate choices based on criteria we still don't fully grasp. These patterns emerge from meticulous study of primary records, including detailed reports kept in regional archives and military correspondence that documented each assault with bureaucratic exactness. The beast exhibited tactical adjustments that suggested it learned from experience in ways far beyond typical animal conduct. Early attacks featured straightforward charges, but as human defenses evolved, so did the creature's tactics. It began exploiting the terrain, striking from positions that blocked escape routes, demonstrating awareness of human lines of sight and areas of vulnerability. This implied it studied its prey with a purposefulness usually associated with human hunters. Accounts describe the creature observing potential victims for lengthy periods before attacking, as if assessing the ideal moment to strike, gathering intelligence on routines and weaknesses. Contemporary narratives, especially those preserved in the meticulous reports of Captain Duhamel of the Clermont Prince Dragoons, whose military dispatches remain in the archives. National describe encounters suggesting the beast understood human psychology with unsettling sophistication. It would injure certain victims without killing them, apparently aware that wounded individuals would lure rescuers into vulnerable positions. It showed an understanding of human weapon limitations, staying at distances that rendered muskets useless while remaining close enough to instill terror. Most disturbingly, it seemed to recognize certain people across multiple interactions, leading witnesses to believe it held a personal grudge against specific families. The beast's treatment of corpses revealed behaviors beyond mere feeding. Many victims bore wounds inconsistent with typical predation, precise removal of particular organs, positioning of bodies that seemed purposeful rather than random, markings that appeared almost ritualistic in their accuracy. Some bodies were partially eaten but with choice parts left untouched, as if the creature killed for reasons other than hunger. Others were discovered in places that required considerable effort to move them there. This hinted that the beast wanted the bodies found at specific locations for motives that remain beyond our understanding. Period physicians who examined victims left detailed anatomical records that survive in departmental archives. These documents, written with medical precision unusual for the era, describe wounds reflecting methodology rather than instinct. Accuracy, rather than mindless tearing, selection rather than random destruction. The anatomical illustrations show attack patterns targeting specific vulnerabilities with an accuracy that suggests either extraordinary knowledge or grim experience. One doctor noted that the beast seemed to grasp human anatomy better than many surgeons, knowing precisely where to strike for maximum damage with minimal effort. Comment below. What disturbs you more, the possibility that the beast was an animal with human-like consciousness, or that it could have been something that transcends our comfortable categories entirely? How do these historical accounts of apparent consciousness in predation connect to modern debates about animal intelligence and nature's agency? Society's reaction to the beast's intelligence proved just as revealing as the intelligence itself. Local communities devised elaborate theological explanations for why God would allow such conscious evil to exist in animal form. Some viewed the beast as divine punishment for collective sins, but this raised troubling questions. Why would punishment take the shape of an intelligent predator rather than a natural disaster? Others interpreted it as a demon in animal guise, but this required explaining why prayers and exorcisms proved futile. The Bishop of Mende's pastoral letters, preserved in diocesan archives, reveal the Church struggling to maintain theological coherence when faced with an entity that seemed to possess consciousness without a soul. Military responses under Captain Duhamel, and later under the king's own gunbearer, François Antoine, showed a growing recognition that they were up against an adversary requiring tactics normally reserved for human foes. Duhamel's reports to Versailles describe ever more complex operations, coordinated sweeps, intelligence gathering from attack patterns, and psychological warfare aimed at demoralizing an enemy he wasn't sure could be demoralized. A tangible sense of exasperation emanates from these records. Professional soldiers found themselves facing an adversary that appeared to comprehend their tactics and adjust without delay. Scholars today, analyzing the Enlightenment era, observe that the beast posed a crisis of knowledge for intellectuals of that time. Assuming animals had awareness similar to humans, what then served as the foundation for human superiority? Should the natural world generate minds that function with principles distinct from human ethics? What implications would that have for the intent behind existence? This creature compelled a reckoning with prospects that undermined any cosmology grounded in rigid distinctions between humans and beasts, reason and instinct. What observers termed as unnecessary cruelty, exceeding what was required for survival, offered the most unsettling display of the beast's alleged awareness. Several reports detail how the creature toyed with those it preyed upon prior to delivering fatal blows, actions implying it gained pleasure from the panic it generated. In her recorded account, Marie-Jeanne Vallée, renowned for injuring the beast and living to tell the tale, recounted how it continuously encircled her, executing deceptive moves that appeared intended to terrify instead of mounting an instant assault, as if relishing her terror. This hint of sadistic behavior within an animal shattered all reassuring beliefs regarding the indifference of the natural world. Perhaps more disturbing were the reports concerning its noises. Unlike typical wolf howling or growling, observers portrayed utterances that neared linguistic intricacy, patterns that shifted depending on the circumstances, distinct cries for varying scenarios, and some individuals insisted they could almost discern actual words. Numerous statements gathered during the 1800s by scholars contain accounts of witnesses who asserted the creature could talk. Yet no consensus emerged regarding the content, pointing toward utterances on the edge of speech that people were unable to fully interpret. An additional unsettling dimension arose from uncertainty over whether this predator operated solo or within an organized group. A number of reports depict several creatures acting in tandem, indicating collective reasoning or a chain of command surpassing typical pack dynamics. Incidents took place concurrently in areas too far apart for a lone individual, while employing comparable tactics that implied either interaction among different beings or a single awareness controlling numerous physical forms. That scenario suggests a distributed form of consciousness, depicting the monster not as an isolated entity, but rather a system. Modern scholars have thoroughly catalogued records of wolf assaults across France, and these reveal that the conduct of the Gévaudan creature constantly surpassed all known precedents. Thus, we face three alternatives: a freakishly clever single specimen, a species not previously identified that possesses mental faculties beyond what we typically attribute to non-humans, or a phenomenon that fundamentally questions our basic assumptions about the emergence of awareness in nature. Please subscribe for further examination of what consciousness means within the natural order and insights the Beast of Gévaudan offers concerning potential intelligences, monitoring us with motives beyond our grasp. In what ways do old beliefs about nature acting with purpose connect to today's understanding that ecological systems could harbor varieties of awareness, functioning at magnitudes and via methods that human minds find challenging to grasp? What was seen as the beast's conscious presence leaves an impact that reaches past mere historical fascination, touching modern debates about mental processes in animals and the ability of nature to act deliberately. Contemporary studies uncovering advanced reasoning in creatures from crows to octopuses, the identification of botanical signaling systems implying some level of sentience, and an increasing acknowledgement that awareness could be far more common than notions of human uniqueness, allowed these collectively resemble the unease that the Gévaudan predator initially brought into sharp focus. Suppose the natural world holds minds that follow ethical codes unlike human ones, seeing us similarly to how we see quarry and adjusting to our countermeasures through deliberate planning. In that case, our standing at the apex of existence turns into a shaky hypothesis, not a sacred certainty. With climate shifts and environmental breakdown compelling us to see that natural processes display patterns hinting at purpose, if not actual awareness, the cunning hunting of the Gévaudan monster stands as an earlier example of nature adapting to human encroachment through strategies apparently designed to take advantage of our weak points. Each extreme weather occurrence that strikes human-built systems with eerie accuracy, every new illness that circumvents our barriers, each series of extinctions that unfold in ways implying coordinated reaction instead of chance devastation, all resonate with the beast's proof that the natural world could host consciousness that watches, judges, and reacts to human actions with a cleverness we have just started to grasp. Section 2. The Contagion of Fear. The ways in which dread reshapes a society. The most damaging effect of the Gévaudan creature was not the actual killings, but the manner in which panic altered the communal structure of impacted villages, exposing just how swiftly the threads of society unravel when confronting a menace that functions beyond known categories. That prolonged ordeal over 3 years provided an experimental setting to witness the breakdown of social order. Suspicion infiltrated once unified localities, and the rise of blaming practices set resident against resident, occasionally resulting in ferocity surpassing even that of the monster. This societal ailment outlasted the physical assaults, imprinting wounds upon the area's heritage that remained for many decades after the final verified kill. Scholarly examination of mass psychological injury during the early modern era offers a lens to see how Gévaudan exemplifies a particularly vivid case in history where an outside menace was absorbed as a sickness within the social body. The monster destroyed lives, yet anxiety destroyed mutual confidence, reshaping communities that had persisted for ages into wary collections of likely targets and potential accomplices. Records from parish archives and administrative documents of that era illustrate the full scope of this shift. The unraveling started when the normal social routines that held communities together began to deteriorate. Marketplaces grew deserted as people avoided traveling between settlements. Religious festivities requiring assembly were either called off or conducted with armed escorts, turning sacred events into militarized gatherings. Farm labor, necessarily carried out in remote fields, became a deadly gamble where peasants had to choose between starvation and being attacked. Children ceased playing outdoors, resulting in a generation raised to view the outside world as fundamentally dangerous. The physical environment itself shifted from being seen as a familiar home to an alien hunting ground, where any thicket could conceal death. Marriage trends in the area show significant disruption during the years of the beast. Young women, who were the main targets, ended up effectively under house arrest, barred from taking part in courtship rituals that demanded movement and social interaction. Church records indicate a steep drop in marriages from 1764 to 1767, followed by an unusual surge later as postponed unions eventually took place. Yet these marriages formed after the beast often crossed traditional community borders, indicating that the social structures governing mate selection had been permanently disrupted. The economic consequences triggered a cascade of social breakdowns. Trade routes linking Gévaudan to the wider French economy became deadly passages, cutting off communities from markets and causing artificial shortages. Prices for goods soared as merchants demanded extra pay to venture into the area. Local production ground to a halt as farmers deserted their fields to seek safety in villages. Tax collection, which required officials to move between settlements, practically stopped, leading to a financial crisis that prevented an organized response to the menace. The impoverished, lacking the means to pay for protection available to the rich, were forced to choose between starving indoors or being attacked outdoors. Historical studies of borderland communities in Europe reveal how heavily social order relies on predictable patterns of danger. When confronted with threats that deviated from known patterns, social institutions designed for normal challenges, bandits, wolves, disease, proved not only ineffective, but actually harmful. This opened up vulnerabilities that the beast appeared to exploit almost deliberately. Class conflicts that usually remained under control erupted into open strife. Peasants accused the nobility of being indifferent to their suffering, pointing out how seigneurial hunting rights had been fiercely guarded before the beast appeared. Yet now they seemed to mock the deaths of commoners. The nobility, in turn, blamed peasant superstition and cowardice for hindering a rational response. Clergy found themselves torn between their duty to offer spiritual solace and their inability to explain why God would allow such relentless attacks on the faithful. These tensions caused a three-way fragmentation of society that prevented coordinated action while generating numerous opportunities for internal disputes. The rise of conspiracy theories about the beast revealed deeper societal rifts. Some claimed the beast was trained by nobles to terrorize the peasantry into submission. Others insisted it was divine retribution for local heresy, accusing neighbors of not being orthodox enough. Allegations flew that specific families had struck deals with the beast, exchanging safety for information about easy targets. The fact that some households seemed mysteriously spared while others endured repeated assaults fueled suspicions that turned grief into anger aimed at the survivors. Reflect on how the social unraveling in Gévaudan foreshadows modern reactions to existential dangers. Can you see similarities between the paranoia of the beast era and today's social media frenzy? How do communities stay united when facing threats that defy predictable patterns? Jean Chastel, the man who ultimately killed what was accepted as the beast, embodies the social confusion that terror created. Local legend portrayed him as a hero, but contemporary records suggest a more complicated figure, sometimes suspected of being in league with the beast. Accused of profiting from the fear through various schemes, finally gaining redemption through a killing that may have been staged rather than heroic. His life after the beast, marked by neither reward nor punishment but by lingering suspicion, shows how social trust, once shattered, resists being restored even after the threat is gone. The role of strangers and outsiders during the crisis merits particular examination. Instead of effectively integrating fresh information, offer your perspective. Could the creature's defiance of categorization expose weaknesses in our methods for structuring knowledge of nature? What could lie in the gaps between our classifications, which we consistently overlook due to the absence of suitable conceptual tools? The global reaction to this taxonomic dilemma was especially telling. The Royal Society of London, a stronghold of Enlightenment-era science, demonstrated an astonishing unwillingness to address French accounts concerning the creature. During that era, their philosophical transactions made no reference to the occurrences that preoccupied French scholarly circles. This absence conveys more than any active participation could have. It seems British researchers opted to overlook events that could undermine classification frameworks, instead of facing proof of their shortcomings. German naturalists, holding less steadfastly to strict Linnaean categories, showed greater readiness to consider that the creature might be an unrecognized species or an unheard-of hybrid. Gamelin's letters, exchanged with French counterparts, reveal a compelling shift from disbelief to a troubled acknowledgement that a truly unusual being might be real. His proposals regarding environmental conditions generating structural novelties foreshadowed subsequent evolutionary theories, but were rejected by French peers as lacking proper rigor. The part played by tangible proof, or its conspicuous lack in taxonomic disputes, warrants scrutiny. In spite of many fatalities blamed on the creature, surprisingly few physical remains endured for scientific analysis. Corpses of supposed creatures went missing, were interred without proper care, or were kept under conditions that obstructed thorough investigation. Craniums that could have settled controversies disappeared. Hides that might have been inspected decayed at an oddly fast pace. This lack of proof turned into proof in its own right, whether indicating a plot to conceal the creature's genuine identity or features that defied conventional preservation. Examining the history of scientific approaches shows how the creature laid bare the circular reasoning within Enlightenment classification. We are only able to categorize things that align with our existing categories, yet those categories originate from what we have already grouped. Truly unprecedented events have no position in these structures other than as monsters, inherently situated beyond logical structure. The creature provoked a reckoning with the idea that monstrosity might be a far more ordinary classification than the neat taxonomic systems presumed. Attempts during that era to apply nascent probability theory to the creature's behavior were similarly exasperating. Mathematicians tried to diagram the patterns of assaults to foresee upcoming incidents, yet the beast appeared to breach statistical norms with unsettling regularity. Aggressions clustered and then spread out with no clear pattern. Favored stalking areas changed without any environmental justification. Choices of victims exhibited tendencies that probability theory could not grasp. The inability of mathematical instruments, crafted to discover structure in seeming disorder, indicated either concealed factors at work past what we can detect. Alternate possibility, pure randomness that defied a deterministic perspective. The medical study of victims offered another domain where categorization broke down. Injuries displayed traits that did not correspond to any recognized predator. Compressive strength surpassing the bite force of any European animal. Scratch patterns with distances that corresponded to no cataloged species. Tissue harm pointing to enzymatic features not seen in mammalian oral fluids. Medical records from that period, instead of elucidating the creature's character, only compounded the enigmas. Efforts to connect wounds to familiar animals demanded ever more strained rationalizations that convinced nobody. Spiritual leaders presented their own classification frameworks, which turned out to be just as insufficient. Doctrinal divisions such as heavenly retribution, demonic presence, or inherent wickedness, everyone fell short of completely explaining the creature's distinct traits. If it was divine chastisement, why assume such a bizarre shape? If it was a devil, why did sanctified armaments fail to work? If evil is natural, then which natural law could give rise to such an unnatural being? The growing number of theological theories mirrored the expansion of scientific ones, exposing the same failure to fit strange occurrences into established systems. Hit subscribe to discover how the Beast of Gévaudan shakes our faith in humanity's knowledge structures. What lies outside our categories that we consistently overlook? In what ways do strange events expose the weaknesses in our organization of reality? The failure of classification reaches further than mere historical fascination and holds significance today. Today's cryptozoological quest for hidden creatures, the recent finds of species our models declared impossible, and the increasing awareness that nature's inventiveness surpasses human fantasy, all repeat the teachings of the Gévaudan incident. Whenever researchers uncover life in places deemed uninhabitable, when a new species appears with traits that break taxonomic rules, or when hybrid vitality creates offspring defying reproductive limits, we catch whisper of the beast mocking our claims to total knowledge. Currently, climate change generates ecological oddities that defy categorization as frequently as the Gévaudan crisis did. Hybrid regions where species blend in novel ways, behavioral shifts that overturn our understanding of animal thought, and features appearing despite supposed genetic limits, all indicate that nature's creativity outpaces our mental models. The Gévaudan beast serves as a historical lesson for today's realization that confident labeling may be a soothing delusion, not a true reflection of an ever-inventive world. Part 4. The Crown's Impotence. When authority crumbles before nature. Louis XV's reaction to the Gévaudan crisis exposed the deep helplessness of even an absolute monarchy when confronting a danger that ignored normal methods of rule. The heir of the Sun King, governing from Versailles with nominal influence over all of France, saw his power ridiculed by a creature that acknowledged no master except its own appetite. This clash of political authority and natural wildness laid bare the hypocrisies within Enlightenment absolutism. It showed that assertions of divine privilege were worthless to a beast that worshipped only need. Examining power and politics in pre-revolutionary France shows that the beast crisis was far more than a local disaster. It questioned basic ideas about how a ruler's authority relates to safeguarding his people. The monarchy failed to halt a rural killer, even after allocating assets capable of fighting European conflicts. People began to wonder about the true meaning of legitimacy when it could not ensure elementary safety. The king's increasing action followed a path from scornful neglect to frantic involvement, reflecting a rising awareness of the political stakes. First news arriving at Versailles was brushed off as rural hype, ordinary farmer panic that local officials could manage. However, as victims multiplied and the area's economy fell apart, demands for the king to act escalated. Sending Captain Dumel's dragoons in February 1765 marked the first admission that this went beyond an ordinary wolf menace. Yet their lack of success after lengthy, thorough hunts started the decline in royal reputation that would worsen as the crisis dragged on. Letters kept in the National Archives reveal Louis XV's deepening personal commitment to ending the ordeal, a situation that risked turning into a symbol of broader administrative failures. His messages to provincial officials show annoyance near fury that a mere animal could thwart the crown's best attempts. Naming François Antoine, the monarch's own firearm carrier and famed wolf slayer, to the post of royal wolf hunter with exceptional authority, showed a dedication of assets typically saved for crushing uprisings or battling overseas foes. Scholars of French royal culture observe that the monster turned into a measure of kingly power, more crucial than numerous military operations. Victory would prove the monarchy's ability to shield its subjects. Defeat would hint at boundaries to absolutism that might inspire other types of defiance. The consequences went beyond rural killings to strike at the very foundation of royal authority. The money spent to fight the creature grew to incredible amounts. Rewards for killing the monster surpassed what wealthy traders earned in a year. Expert hunters brought from all over Europe received wages equal to those of army officers. Custom-made arms for the chase used up funds that could have outfitted whole battalions. The overall cost, deliberately concealed in the royal books to prevent shame, probably surpassed the expense of small-scale wars. But all this fortune was powerless against a being driven by survival's harsh logic, not monetary gain. The crown's reputation suffered greatly from its military defeats. Elite dragoons, veterans of countless European wars, were outsmarted by a creature that appeared to grasp their strategies more profoundly than they grasped its essence. Structured hunts meant to ensnare any ordinary beast kept ending in failure. Ambushes laid in promising locations yielded no results, yet assaults took place in zones thought to be safe. The army's failure to restore control by sheer force exposed the boundaries of standard might against an abnormal menace. Share your thoughts in the comments. How does the monarchy's defeat by the beast foreshadow today's governments struggling with ecological emergencies? What does this past episode tell us about the constraints of human authority when faced with natural powers beyond our frameworks? When François Antoine finally slew a sizable wolf in September 1765, the monarchy promptly proclaimed it the beast, ignoring local doubts, a clear instance of political need trumping factual evidence. The grand procession that brought the body to Versailles, the royal inspection where nobles expressed their joy. The formal announcement that the ordeal was over was a theatrical display of power, not a genuine solution. Shortly after, attacks recommenced, forcing the monarchy to decide whether to confess the lie. They opted for the falsehood, publicly maintaining the beast was dead while covertly funding the ongoing chase. The political fallout went far beyond the current emergency, touching deeper issues of rule and safety. Absolutism was rationalized by Enlightenment thought via a pact in which citizens traded liberty for security. Yet if the monarchy could not safeguard commoners from one beast, what legitimate reason remained for their submission? Thinkers usually occupied with abstract liberties discovered in Gévaudan a tangible instance of administrative breakdown, backing their criticisms far better than any theoretical discourse. The troubling issue of why children bore such heavy suffering posed unique theological challenges. Old theories concerning original sin or being made examples could not grapple with the raw actuality of innocent fatalities. Certain religious scholars posited that the agony of children could turn sinful grown-ups to faith. Yet this utilitarian view of blameless torment sparked unsettling doubts about God's justice. Alternative viewpoints argued that early demise spared youngsters from later transgressions, but such reasoning could excuse any horror as concealed compassion. The presence or lack of miracles also created further problems. Numerous reports tell of people who escaped the beast's attacks, believing their deliverance was an act of supernatural rescue. The creature's seeming awareness shifts nature from a passive setting to a possible actor harboring its own baffling intentions. J.M. Smith, the historian whose research launched our series, argues that the Beast of Gévaudan marks a pivotal historical moment. In that encounter, a medieval terror confronted the modern mentality, both forever altered. The medieval worldview could fit monsters into a cosmic order via religious paradigms. The modern mindset demanded logical answers, but the events refused to supply them. The beast dwelled in a threshold era where both perspectives collapsed, exposing voids that belief and reasoning alike could not bridge. The enduring anguish ingrained in the collective memory of the impacted areas reflects injuries beyond the mere loss of lives. Villages that lived through the reign of the beast could never restore their societal bonds completely. Households that suffered beast attacks bore shame for generations. Piety, unsettled by the heavens' quiet during the emergency, experienced irreversible waning. Commerce and trade ravaged by dread gave rise to fresh dynamics rooted in wariness instead of confidence. The beast claimed more than just human lives. It destroyed the naivety surrounding humankind's role in nature's scheme. Now, as shifting climate and environmental breakdown compel us to view nature as an active force rather than a resource, the Beast of Gévaudan offers a historical parallel for what occurs when human-centered beliefs collide with natural powers, indifferent to our classifications. The disappearance of each species, rippling through ecosystems in ways that hint at a systemic reaction. The appearance of each new illness that appears to strike human weaknesses with eerie accuracy. And each extreme weather event that seems to intelligently adjust to our countermeasures. All these reflect the beast's demonstration. Nature may harbor types of awareness and willpower that we consistently overlook until they appear as dangers. Hit the subscribe button to keep delving into how historical beasts shed light on modern weaknesses. Activate notifications to be part of inquiries that uncover what bygone horrors tell us about current threats. Pass along this journey to individuals prepared to face unsettling realities regarding mankind's fragile stance within systems we claim to manage, yet hardly grasp. The endless chase persists not amid Gévaudan's woods, but anywhere that human conviction collides with abnormal occurrences that defy easy classification. Within each research article that grapples to account for events defying expected patterns, within every official panel probing system breakdowns that seemed impossible, within each religious effort to make sense of pain that appears pointless, within every viral social media frenzy that turns groups into crowds of suspicion, the beast continues its hunt. Every one of us is possible quarry in systems we have thrown off balance, yet fail to grasp. Watched over by forms of awareness we cannot identify, at the mercy of influences we cannot sway, exposed to powers that run by rationalities which encompass but surpass our understanding. The Gévaudan beast serves as a caution that our place at the top of food webs, social ladders, and cosmic orders is only temporary, open to change by powers that are indifferent to our claims of mastery. Until our next encounter, in realms where the shadows of history illuminate current gloom, where cozy assumptions crumble under harsh realities, where creatures of yore disclose horrific prospects ahead. I am Obsidian Vault, leading you across domains where human understanding encounters its boundaries and non-human minds possibly discover their chances. Keep in mind, the Beast of Gévaudan does not reside in old records, but in each instant that nature shows a will we never foresaw, when awareness appears in ways we cannot identify, When our belief in human dominance clashes with powers that challenge our convictions, using fang and mind, a truth we deny until the moment has passed, the pursuit goes on, and we stay the hunted in contests whose guidelines we never grasped, conducted by intelligences we cannot fathom, with consequences that may involve our very existence, as a species that believed itself, ruler of a world which holds rulers vastly older and more patient than we have the courage to conceive. Sleep well, dear audience, but be aware that with each sound outside your window, each unusual order in nature's events, each instant when fate appears too exact to be mere chance, an entity observes you with motives you cannot grasp. It judges using an awareness beyond your identification, and it makes choices based on principles that would terrify you if you could understand them. The beast has fallen. All hail the beast, undying and ravenous, lingering in the gaps that lie between our own knowledge and that which knows us intimately.